I've never killed a man, but today might be my first.
Oh no.
Lex Fridman is known for his calm, polite and thoughtful interviews all over the internet, but behind that calmness is sometimes hidden some communication strategies that can be smarter than they appear at first sight. And in this video we will break down exactly how you can control the frame in the way he does.
I think there are good conversations to be had about a lot of stuff related to how we handled the coronavirus. You know, were lockdowns effective? Was there enough data to support the huge measures we took? You know, why didn't we have the option to show I was infected a month ago? Why do I need to be vaccinated? Why wasn't that option ever a thing in the United States? I don't think it was. There are really good questions to be asked there, but all the people asking the questions are also trying to tell you that ivermectin and monoclonal antibodies are the way to go for everything, and the vaccine is evil, and they're just going to turn you gay like the frogs.
Yeah,
and it's like, Jesus, like you can't, there's like no place to reasonably criticize from, because all of the people that are criticizing aren't doing it with an open mind, or you know, they're not reading studies or doing anything. They're saying like, I do my own research, which means they listen to whatever the last guy on Joe Rogan said, and now they're parroting that opinion 100%.
Easy now.
Yeah.
Easy now, bro.
The last guy on Joe Rogan, not Joe Rogan, okay? That Robert Malone guy on Joe Rogan got me real fired
That's
up.
one guest.
People see him as like the father of mRNA technology. He published one paper, okay?
What do you mean people? Which people think that?
Joe Rogan fans. I get like, I run into these people. I start arguing with people, and they start setting me. But what about?
I'm a Joe Rogan fan, and I appreciate the vaccine.
So, we are going to use my simplified version of the sleight of mouth model to explain what is going on here from a frame control perspective. And the very first argument or inference made by Destiny that is worth mentioning here to start this breakdown is that all the people who criticize heavily vaccination or the right vaccine and the way the government handled the coronavirus, they listen to Joe Rogan. Therefore, as a consequence, we can't take that criticism seriously. And hearing the words Joe Rogan in some negative context, Lex, who's apparently a friend of him, says easy now. That is known in this model as a pattern interruption. You are on purpose breaking a rapport just to show the person might be crossing the line or might be about to cross the line with you. You say that though while maintaining respect, because he did not insult, he did not yell, but he's showing some unpleasant feelings about what he is hearing. And that is usually a signal for the interlocutor when you have been respectful all along and suddenly you put a stop in the conversation like this. That is an indication to not go too far on this topic. Hearing that Destiny right away tries to get back the rapport, he starts losing here, saying that no, it is maybe not Joe Rogan himself, but you know, this guy he invited who criticized the whole vaccination thing, that guy was really a bad guy. That is called here an alternative view. You just point out to a different version of what you just said, trying to reframe the whole thing, whether in a positive light or negative light. At least you try to maintain the frame. But so far Lex is still holding that slightly better than Destiny is. And he's demonstrating that brilliantly by pointing out to the specific evidence. Going down into specifics, it is just one guest, that's all. It is not the entire Joe Rogan experience. It is just one guest. But trying to maintain his way of seeing things, Destiny is still going to push on that specific argument with that specific guest by discrediting him as much as he can, saying this guy only published one paper and people around, especially people watching the show, seem to take him as a source of authority on COVID or things of that nature. But Lex is pushing back once again, going down again in the specifics case. Which people exactly? Destiny answers the Joe Rogan's fans because obviously he is an expert on this topic as much as he's an expert on absolutely everything he talks about. And with a lot of calmness, again, Lex Fridman is giving a kind of counter argument, offering a new inference here, saying as a simple contradiction that, well, he is himself a Joe Rogan fan and he is in favor of the vaccine. So the argument does not absolutely stand.
That's good. I'm glad you do. But there's definitely
But you said there's a type. What's the type? What's the type of Joe Rogan fan?
Anti-establishment.
I think that's not Joe Rogan. That's a general public discourse. There's a default anti-establishment on the right and the left. That's the default easy thing to go to.
I think Joe Rogan fans are definitely a certain type of anti-establishment, though. Like I could guess the Joe Rogan fan. Like if I were to do general population versus Joe Rogan fan, who do you think is more likely to be anti-vaccine?
Do you have data on this?
You
Or are you
would do
just
that to
guessing?
me?
Yeah.
Just guessing.
Yeah. I think you are actually judging.
I am.
I think you're judging. Because I think you're also, the beautiful thing about podcasting, this could be similar to streaming, is there's a large number of people that just listen. Like, what does it mean to be a Joe Rogan fan?
Diving deeper down into the specifics, which is one of the essential fundamentals of the Socratic method, he is asking Lex, what specific type of Joe Rogan fans are you criticizing? And asking such specific questions helps getting the conversation into some resolution because it reveals the deeper intentions and the deeper values behind somebody's argument. Here, Destiny is not really against Joe Rogan himself, he is against the anti-establishment people or fans or just anybody criticizing governments in all sorts of ways. And Lex Fridman is giving some counter-attack to this by getting on a more general perspective. We call this the meta frame, when you comment on the entire situation, not just the specific argument. Because he says that is a general public discourse by default, both on the right and the left, not just on the right or just on the left, and certainly not just on Joe Rogan's fans. And here I would personally say that Destiny is getting kind of stuck because that might just be a specific argument in which he's not right, but quite often when you're getting attacked as often as he is getting attacked in interviews, you're just trying to defend by all means, I guess. So he's trying to use, I would qualify that as a slightly childish argument, saying, no, but Joe Rogan's fans are definitely anti-establishment. I don't know them, but I know they are. But this lack of supportive data is pointed out by Lex Fridman. Instead of attacking as an idiot, he's just questioning again, do you have data on this? Do you have data on which people are anti-establishment and how many of them are anti-establishment within the Joe Rogan's fans? So he's framing this time the intention, the original intention of Destiny, as being someone who just wants to judge people who does not think like him, and judging at the same time any source of apparent authority that is contradicting his viewpoint, because anyone anti-establishment is against Destiny's viewpoint, therefore that is a bad person. It is also called villainization in traditional debate tactics. It is just vilifying any person who does not think like you. Which comes down ultimately to what I would qualify as the brilliant question: what does it mean to be a Joe Rogan fan? And how do you define that? And how did you learn what it meant to be a Joe Rogan fan?
I don't think you just listen. I think people listen and absorb the information.
I would say that the Joe Rogan fan base is as divided in the vaccine as the general public.
Gotcha. Man, I'm going to look for polling data on that. I'm sure somebody's got to have done it out there, but...
No, but you're basically revealing the fact they have no data. You're using your own judgment.
For sure.
Based
on how he's had conversations about how his experience with the coronavirus, and then based on the guests that have come on that have talked and echoed a lot of like anti-vax talking points and been completely unchallenged, and then based on statements he's made about like myocarditis and the vaccine and everything as well, yeah.
So it's the level of challenge or not that he's doing.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, and then what his true positions are, and then the types of guests he typically chooses to bring on to talk about the vaccines, yeah.
Okay, but that represents somehow a deep anti-establishment feeling versus just a vaccine. I mean, I've seen the vaccine and other things being a thing that broke people.
They seem to the coronavirus, that whole 1 or 2 years broke a lot of people.
There's a lot of emotion, and the emotion quickly solidified into an opinion that almost had nothing to do with like thinking through and updating your knowledge and so on. You just made up your mind.
And we come down here to the bottom of the argument of Lex Fridman when he says that Joe Rogan fanbase is as divided as the general public in all sorts of ways. So your arguments don't stand as much as you would like to make it appear on this podcast. And Destiny tries to save his side of the argument one last time by explaining that he knows what the true positions of Rogan are, and Joe is mostly inviting people who hold some opinions that he is not challenging on purpose. Therefore, we know he's a bad guy. But then Lex is using one of the most known phrases in rhetoric, which is the formulation, how can this mean that? Also known in the meta model for those who have the reference. Basically, how can people being unchallenged mean that they are anti-establishment? This, indeed, in pure logical reasoning, does not absolutely follows. Therefore, it is revealing the personal interpretation of the person holding the viewpoint. And Lex is concluding with one comment that I think is pretty wise and something you could consider reading more often and saying or responding every time someone tries to piss you off. He says there is a lot of emotions into your arguments, into your viewpoints and into your reasons, and emotion quickly solidified into an opinion that almost had nothing to do, harsh blow, with thinking and updating your knowledge. So you just made up your mind. You made a decision based on feelings instead of facts or verified data. And that is funny, I would say, because it is often something both people from the right and the left criticize from the other side, but never as much admit on their side. So all of those rhetoric strategies also help to unveil any personal interpretation that any individual is using as absolute truth to convince you that you're wrong. And with those types of questioning and simple frame control techniques, you can also handle better negotiations, you can also resolve conflicts at work whenever you have to face one, and handle tough, toxic relationships if you need to face it sometimes.
First you call me spineless, and then you call me a bad communicator.
But no, look, you're here, you're doing it. So you get props for me, okay? Good job.
That motherfucker.
But there are like so many,
The complete breakdown of all of those language patterns and how they work and how can you interrupt someone's frame calmly with logic and reasoning and cleverness instead of yelling and insulting is contained into my book Magical Linguistics, from which that model was taken from. You can find that book down below. And if you just want a basic brief introduction for free, you also have the 7 steps to master sleight of mouth, which is definitely a good starting point if you want to figure out the best techniques whenever somebody is trying to steal the frame from you and whenever you need to communicate with more elegance into an environment where people don't always let you speak. How can you assert your frame without being a douchebag in those environments? This is explained down below into those 7 steps. You can find them in the description box, and waiting for you to read that, I'll tell you thanks a lot for watching and see you soon in the next video.